always takes 3 times. Perfect. My name is Arvind Singhal. I facilitate in the Department of Communication here at UTEP. I am going to be working with my colleague Henry Liberating. Henry cut his vacation short. He usually spends a few months in France in his chateau over the summer, and he heard that there was a fall faculty retreat, so he's here with us. Thank you, Henry. Henry had a rather illustrious career with an organization that we know as Merck. The first thing that we'll do is something that we call speed dating. So what we'd like you to do is, when the bell rings, walk up to somebody whom you don't know, or you know, if you know everybody, know a little less than others, and you'll have a total of 4 minutes. In those 4 minutes, both of you would be talking. You can decide how to divide the time, maybe 2 minutes each. And you will be answering or sharing your response to 2 questions. Yeah? You don't need to take notes, just take mental notes. They're easy questions. Question number 1, the response will come from you, is classes begin on Monday, and what are you most anxious about? Now, this could be from the perspective of a teacher, a facilitator. Classes begin on Monday. What are you most anxious about? Question number 2. What do the words liberating structures evoke in your mind? Liberating structures. And therefore, what do you expect? What do you hope to get from this meeting? 4 minutes, find somebody you don't know, 2 questions. Now we will do round 2. So leave your cherished dates and find another date. The task is the same. This time maybe you have 3.5 minutes. Now that you know what you're going to say, and of course you can embellish. Starting now. Third date. The task is the same. Find somebody who really attracts you, move on, and this time you have 3 minutes. Starting now.
What does it feel like? Good, bad, whatever.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And anything else?
It was active.
I got 4 dates.
More comments? A little loud. Oh, is that good or bad? Oh.
I'm glad I had some gum.
I found out that some other people's fears were similar to mine.
Ah.
And that felt good for somebody
Any other comments? Why did we start this way? What did that do?
Create institutional networks and connections between people in networks.
What else?
It made me not shy about talking.
All right. What else?
It's liberating.
Okay.
Yeah, it's liberating.
And then the observation is we're in pairs, so it can be more personal rather than you're talking to the rest of the group.
Any other thoughts?
So you push us to reach out to people you might not have talked to.
Did you notice that there were no speeches before? I was trying. Yeah, I failed. Thank God. So we have a few, and I'll just point to one that I think is important. And that is, it's a way of doing something that affirms your presence in the place, as opposed to be sitting down and somebody is making a presentation. So we start and we give you a voice immediately. This is your meeting. That's the statement. Okay. So, if you don't mind standing up a little longer, you're close to a few other people, so maybe get together in small groups of 3 or so, 3 or 4, and here's the question. When do you think in the work that you do, you could use speed networking? 2-3 minutes, quick. We're not
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Shane.
So, I understand one word, important. What does that mean?
Just a little bit of sharing, maybe. Some ideas that came out in the
Going to
group.
make them breathe like this.
And you don't have to share the story in terms of I. It's a we, if you prefer, we had the idea of doing this, or doing that, using it this way. So
Well, we thought we could use it in college meetings that happen at the beginning of the year to kind of engage in more dialogue rather than having show and tell, where someone comes and presents. And we listen to actually dialogue as small groups and then have those groups then.
I got it.
They're great icebreakers in the classroom environment. A lot of times you go into a classroom and you go into a classroom at the beginning of the semester, you don't know anyone.
My group had a wonderful idea to use this for content-specific discussions in class. So say, for instance, if you're discussing about the elections of 1880, this might be an ideal format for deepening learning.
Depending on the audience that you're with, you may have to introduce what you're going to do, so that people are not sort of, what's going on here? What are they asking me to do? With this group, it was not necessary. We just jumped right into it. The questions that are part of this are important. If the questions are not relevant to you, it's not going to work. If you ask people to talk to each other about something they are not interested in, or they don't care about, it's not going to work. Okay? It's important to encourage people to meet with people that they don't normally talk to, because the purpose is to really create, one of the purposes is to create connections. And then, if you're going to try this, stick to doing it the way we describe it, and then you can make modifications. So like the suggestion that was made, that is a modification, you can certainly do that. But first learn to do it the simple way, straightforward, and then see what happens. Okay? With Liberating Structure, you have a new option for transforming what you're doing, whether you're working in an organization, or whether you're teaching as you are here, or whether you're learning for students. So the same people, same incentives, same organization, they just change the patterns of interaction between people, and you're including people much more than in the normal process. So they're simple, and what is it that they promote? A lot of self-discovery. So instead of things coming from the top, the CEO has made a decision, tells everybody, march this way, it's a lot of self-discovery. Same thing in a classroom and so forth. So it's very much bottom-up, inside-out, rather than top-down. And it's very focused, you will see some of the other things that we're doing, on what is working here. Really paying attention to what is successful. Okay. Relevance to student is obvious. I don't even have to read this, except for making a point that I think is important, and that is that this is an opportunity for the student to learn how to learn. Because each one of those structures is something that they can use in the present or in the future. They are learning tools. It's a toolbox. Okay. So this one is called Appreciative Interviews. And we're going to ask you again to parent. So this time, however, instead of answering a question, we're going to ask you to tell a story. So again, find somebody preferably that you don't know. And the story that we're going to ask you to tell is to remember one of the most powerful learning experiences that you had, wherever it was, as long as it was in an academic environment. So we're talking about, a classroom kind of thing or something like that. Okay? And not skiing or playing tennis. And so we'll ask you to tell a story to a partner, and you'll be in pairs. So the first, and I'll go back to that. The first configuration, you're a pair, and we'll give you 5 minutes each, and we'll see how that works. So it's one person tells a story, and the other one is interviewing, usually. So it's one talks, you want to listen and ask questions. It's not a conversation. And we give you 10 minutes in total, and we'll ring the bell in between so that you know where the time is.
Why they think that certain topic, so they can talk to each other about their topics that they're choosing, and they may be interested in learning about the other activities, right?
Telling the story and exchanging information. That's a good
And
idea.
then they own that topic, like talking about that topic, and they own that.
Yeah, in my feminist film class, we always get to this point where we get stuck. We have to do avant-garde cinema, and the students have trouble understanding that.
Appreciative interview.
If I understand appreciative interviewing, I think when we first started doing networking, it was easy to get off track and think that networking is about how you could help me. Appreciative interviewing requires that you connect with the person you're interviewing, so you have to listen and you have to ask follow-up questions. You have to have the assumption that you're maybe not going to be able to help each other, but we can connect.
It's kind of neat to hear the stories that the students have. So it's always great for them to share their stories against each other and to kind of see their views, whether they're positive or negative experiences, and then so they can learn to appreciate every ability and to kind of see it as abilities and not disabilities.
We tend to solve problems, so we tend to talk about problems. And so one way not to talk about problems and to solve them in a different way is to look at the problem and then find the success stories around that problem. When was it that some people were able to do something successful? And share those stories and find out what is in there that can be harvested and build on those successes rather than trying to solve the problem, and the problem goes away.
For us, the mechanism wasn't the key, but it was the idea of being able to break loose of your preconceptions or break the students loose from their preconceptions.
A positive relationship between professor and student fosters learning.
Engaging in stories and role plays.
If you were doing this for real, with a group, of course, you would be, you're collecting this and now you have a discussion. What have we got here? Is there agreement? Is there consensus? Are there things that some people feel strongly about and others feel are wrong? So you sort of clean up your list and bring it down to what is really the most important, essential thing. And now you have generated in about 35 minutes with a whole group of people participating the list of things that you need to pay attention if you want to be successful in the particular activity that you have looked at. Comments?
I really liked the part where we sat down with the four of us and you told someone else's story. I think that's a totally different task and it was very helpful.
I have a comment. This is just from the outside looking in. I don't know if you noticed how you were sitting, your nonverbal communication. There was not a group where you weren't leaning forward into the conversation. There was nobody hanging back like my students sometimes do.
Amber, how was it?
Amazing. It really showed that we all have similar ideas connecting.
I just noticed as a professor and hearing stories of people's experiences as students, that the powerful experiences for students had to do with sort of stepping up and taking risks and putting themselves out there, being more active than we usually think of students as being. And for me as a professor, a lot of my powerful learning experiences were about stepping back and listening.
I think something that I learned from everyone here and from my own experience is that you will always be, not everyone will agree with you. You will always have to kind of step back and you'll stand out. You will not look the same. You may not talk the same way, but if you believe in yourself, people will believe in you. So I think that's what I learned.
One small comment, when you're looking at an activity like this one, and you're trying to look back and say what happened here, you have to look at two different things. One is the process itself, what happened with that, and the other one is the content. They are separate things. Okay. So we ask you to tell a success story. That's a process element. The story itself is the content. So when you're using this, pay attention to those two things, because we tend to be focused on content, and here what we're doing is process.
You might want to adjust it depending on the structure of the actual room you're in, as far as how you can even move chairs or the size of the class. That we could think of going up to pairs or fours, but if you have a very small class, groups of 4 might not work well. And if you have 300, then, you know, it might be better just to turn and talk to the person next to you, especially if you can't move your chair.
Okay, so my suggestion would be to experiment there. You might be surprised. So I've used 1 to 4 with groups of 4 people. Sounds crazy. It changes the conversation. From staying as 4 the whole time versus going 1 to 4. The most unused thing is silence. Reflection. So just doing that, just giving people 1 minute to reflect will change what happens. And with a large group, you will find what works and what doesn't.
So my example is in research. In my research experience, I think this would be a tool that could be used when you're assessing needs in the community, when you're developing your research that's based on the needs of the community, to have people involved in an activity like this and generate ideas.
Yes.
Sarah was mentioning a problem of having to teach certain concepts to undergraduates and not having a textbook and not having really appropriate texts to use. And in a way, I think that's kind of a blessing, because to use this 1 to 4 thing, if you give students even a very brief and not very satisfactory text and have them talk about in pairs, what's missing? What do you know about this subject that isn't here? What's not clear? I mean, just a way to make them engage it and think, to engage that text in a way that isn't just, I have to memorize all this stuff. I think it's kind of a blessing not to have a textbook, even though it does feel like working without a net, at first.
I have one. I do an exercise that many of you know. It's called the muddiest point. And I have students individually write down what is not clear and then hand it in. The 1 to 4 would probably generate kind of the common misunderstandings that linger between people. So have you talk in pairs and then square up, and the group writes out the topic that's not very clear yet and then hands that in. think I'll get more out of that than just having you individually try to think of it. Because you can bounce ideas off each other and formulate it more clearly than often you can do yourself.
Henry Pedro was about to yank the microphone from my hands, but I just handed to him.
Hello. Yeah, here we had a couple of ideas related to perhaps when students have a review session prior to an exam in a large class. We had a couple of, one was to the teacher, the instructor, to bring some questions that the instructor thinks would help the students to engage the understanding of the subject for the exam. And the other idea that we had was perhaps have the students, each student bring a question written down that they don't understand and they would like to ask, and then have those all questions collected and then randomly pull them out by the instructor, read them to the auditorium, and then have the students randomly, to their knowledge, be able to answer the questions by themselves. So to answer each other's questions, so in that way, hopefully be able to harness the collective understanding of the class.
But you can do it in a classroom. A few minutes of whatever, lecture, dialogue, discussion, pause, interrupted sense-making or iterative sense-making, and simple.
Of product managers who had been struggling, they had weekly meetings of a couple of hours. And the thing had really literally fallen apart. It wasn't working, and they were totally frustrated and arguing with each other. What are we going to do? What should we do? And so forth. And they invited us and say, can you come in, and do something with one of your Liberating structures. So we came in and they started explaining to us everything that was wrong and why it wasn't working until then. And so, stop. Well, why don't we try something? No, you don't understand. Just stop. Why don't we try something? And we say to them, okay, why don't we do a 1, 2, 4? And we'll start, with one question. What do you think is the major problem here? So there was about 16 or 17 of them. And we get in 1 minute, and then 2 minutes in 2, and then in groups of 4. And went around, and after less than 10 minutes, we said, okay, in your group, what do you think was a major problem? We don't have a clear purpose. Okay, good. Your group, what's the major problem? We don't have a clear purpose. Your group, yeah, we don't have a clear purpose, but we also are missing a leader. Okay, your group, we don't have a clear purpose. Okay. And it was like a miracle. I mean, those people had been arguing for more than a year about what to do with them. And in less than 10 minutes, they had identified the first thing that they had to do to work to make progress. Okay? And so we did another round with another question. So what do you think you should do as a first step? And again, it was very simple, very smooth. Simply because we had moved the conversation to a different structure. And they were flabbergasted, and so was I, by the way. I mean, we thought this was going to be difficult, and it wasn't. So that's what's interesting about it. And of course, you can only discover this kind of thing by you play around with them in different situations and see what happens.
We are calling for anybody to nominate any story that you heard and say, boy, this one deserves its 2 minutes of applause. So. Don't be bashful.
I like your story.
There's a Connie. I think you may have a. Yeah, I saw that. Here.
Well, I don't know if I should reveal the name of the professor of the story that I heard about.
Please do it.
Okay, his name's Arvin. So the story was from Lucia, and she talked about the first day in one of her classes. They were all given a piece of paper and crayons and told to draw a picture of a healthy community. And so most people kind of felt that was a little strange, that they hadn't used crayons for a really long time. But she still remembers the picture that she drew of a house and a garden and a family and a dog.
You have created participation, engagement, you have enriched the conversation, and you have created safe spaces. So people don't have to risk their life and raise their hand and say, do I dare ask that question? Because most of the questions do not come out. They stay inside the heads of people. And with this simple thing, which doesn't require any expertise, you can get a lot of stuff on it. So you can get that in response to any kind of thing. Okay. So it's just a question of what's the question, what's the subject, what are we working on? So anything, this small group, large group, small group, large group, going back and forth, and you can cycle, obviously. You can do that, and then share with the whole group what came out of your thing. You can generate something. You can generate a new statement, or a new description of something, or a new whatever, by using such a simple method. Okay. So that's what it does for you, and it really creates space for generating things, which cannot be done when you have a group together. That doesn't work. You can work at 2, you can work at 3 or 4, and then that's it. Because we were looking for patterns in stories. Stories is data, so it's looking for patterns in data, versus analyzing. There was no analysis whatsoever. So pattern recognition is what we were designed to do. We do this, we are superb. All our senses are pattern recognition. We can immediately tell a bicycle from a car, a plant, a tree from a bush, etc. You don't need the whole information. You see a pedal and it's a bicycle. You don't need to see the rest of the bicycle. We are excellent at this. Same thing with our ears, taste, touch, pattern recognition, no effort. But beyond that, we see the same thing and we recognize the same thing. So it's easy to get agreement. We don't argue about whether this is a tree and this is a bush. Okay? It's smooth. Okay? But what we're not good at is analyzing, which is why we argue all the time. That's a much more complex activity. But in order to do that, you need data. So you can go and gather data, or you can do the closest thing to it, which is stories. And it's very easy and it's very simple. And depending on the subject, you can start seeing the patterns sometimes with just one story. When it is something that you have already experienced, you hear a story and say, I'm smelling a rat here. Okay. So you don't need to do a survey with 1,500 people, a representative sample and all this kind of thing. Okay. You go out and you collect some stories. They can be success stories, or they can be failures, or they can be whatever you want. And you start looking for patterns. And that is, again, very simple. So you can collect the stories yourself. You can send people out who collect stories and bring them back, or bring people with stories or whatever. It's a very, very, very simple thing. A little sharing of some thoughts about how to use pattern recognition in what you're doing.
I have actually decided this semester to use stories a lot more, especially I teach an introductory course in anthropology, and there's a huge amount of content that can be in there. And I've decided that, especially in an introductory survey course where we're hoping to recruit majors, the main lesson that I want freshmen to get from that is this discipline is really cool. I want to learn more about it. Rather than have them remember subsistence patterns and kinship, charts, and they'll get all that. But what I want to stress more than the content per se are just having them think this is really interesting stuff, and stories do that better.
Teaching students to recognize rhetorical patterns or rhetorical appeals, it scam-proofs them, because when you step back and you see that, say, they're appealing to you on the basis of pathos. You see this little kitten, donate all your money to help this kitten. See, then but when you realize, hey, this person's manipulating me with pathos, then it steals the power of this evil rhetorical appeal, this manipulative rhetorical appeal. And so this is one way where if you identify something, you objectify it, you stand outside of it, and you can analyze it rather than fall for it.
Students, my name is Lucia Dura, and I recently graduated. I'm in the English department, and I start teaching on Tuesday. And I have some friends here. Camille.
Hi, I'm Camille Benitez. I'm an undergrad student. I was a student in Dr. Sinkoff's class and have participated in the electricity. And I love it, so I'm just excited to participate in Fishbowl.
And I'm Milena. I'm a graduate student at the Communication Department and also a teaching assistant.
And my name is Helen, and I'm visiting here from Buffalo, New York. And the reason why I'm here is because I came and participated in Positive Vegans workshop, Liberating Structure workshop, and I went to visit Dr. Singal's class, and I decided that I'm going to try out some of the Liberating Structure activities in my own classrooms, and I did, this last spring semester, and I'm really happy to be back and see, what kind of exciting things can happen today.
So some common experiences are that we are or have recently been students. So we're showing a little bit of a student perspective, and we've all had experience with liberating structures in some way. So what I'm going to invite you guys to do is to pretend like we're at the garden downtown, which is, we could be in the patio or inside. And imagine, a comfortable bar space or around my kitchen table at home where it's a safe space and we're just going to have a fun conversation. So I'm going to ask you guys to reflect on your liberating structures experiences. So we've all done it. What do you think?
I like the way that the liberating structures has worked the experiences that I've had with it. As far as my main experiences in Dr. Sinkoff's class, the way it was kind of thrust upon us. And I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean it in a great way, because you walk into the classroom with an expectation. You expect to sit in rows, face an instructor, listen to the instructor give the lesson. You go by the syllabus, it has the date, we're doing this and this and that. And when we walked into his classroom the first time, he said, let's move these chairs, let's all get in a circle. All right, kind of unexpected. Got into a circle, then we had the tingsha bells that she rang, which was, with the bells, you're just kind of like, okay, what, all right, let's roll with it, and it's a conversation.
Throughout the semester, when we tried out different things, using impromptu, getting into groups, sharing ideas, and the examples actually came out of the students. Now, I wasn't giving the best example that I think to illustrate a theory. They came up with all the scenarios themselves. They acted them out, and they commented on that. And in the beginning, I guess maybe the second or the third week, when we tried to decide if we're going to go with this or not, and he said, this student nerd, he said, no, I don't think it's going to work, and no, it's counterproductive, there are people who are not working, and we should not do it, right? He just said that in the class in front of everybody else. And I had another student say, you were not here last Tuesday, you were not here, it was fantastic. And I was like, whoa, I didn't have to say anything. And because they experienced that, it was so powerful that they learned, they could share, they had something to share. And I had another student to stand up for me. And actually towards the end of the semester, as he actually, this American, the problematic, student, started to take charge to share more. And he was my best advocate in terms of the teaching approach at the end of the semester.
For me, what stood out in the class was how the professor wanted us so much to connect with different people. He was always inviting us to different events and things that was going related or not to our class. But he just stressed it so much how important to connect with different people. I had the experience to connect with Dr. Skateboard. And just here. And yes, he's on the skateboard. And And I was like, wow, it's so interesting the way he teaches physics and in a different way, in straightforward. And he showed us how to do that. So this class was really exciting in just learning how people can help you, how people's experience can help you a lot in your own experience.
I felt like my knowledge was valuable to the group and it was going to some productive end. But I also felt like I could sit in a group with, in one of the conferences that I went, there was a communication scholar, Ramiro Beltran, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's Bolivian and he's the eminence in communication. And he was going to be the keynote speaker at this conference. But to be able to sit with him in a group, in a discussion setting, rather than just, those are the panelists and we're the audience, was very different, and what a great opportunity. And he asked me questions about, you know, what my life was like, and where was I going, and what was I thinking. And the same thing with Henry. I think when I first met Henry was at the Plexus meeting here on campus last fall, and I thought, uh-oh, here's this guy sitting at our group. I mean, what are we going to say? But, you know, it's kind of, it's a big deal for us who are students, and we're in a different, technically different part of the hierarchy.
Speed networking, it worked really, the speed dating, it worked really great with the students, and a lot of them were new and young and were just very intimidated by it, but we did it for about 30 minutes, and we did it about 5-10 times, and 5-7 times, and you started to see them talk more, instead of being more cliquey from each of their schools. They started to talk more with each other, and we tried to get them, well, you know what do you guys want to do with the classroom settings? How do you want to do it? And when they participated more and felt like they were contributing, they seemed a lot more enthusiastic.
The floor is open to questions. I mean, those are people with a certain amount of experience, and if you want to ask them a question, you're welcome. Questions, anybody?
Could you say a little more about what types of things would work well with this fishbowl thing, and what the value-added piece is of having these concentric rings as opposed to you just being up front and all of us looking up at you in the front of the room?
The reason why I really find it liberating is because, at the end of the day, I realize we're all just human beings. Irrelevant, your age, gender, ethnic background, status. Like you were saying about you having this conversation or in the group with this famous scholar. We're just a human being sharing our experiences and thoughts and ideas and emotions. That's really liberating to me.
When we experienced this fishbowl in our class, we had an empty chair right here. And this empty chair was for someone that was out of the fishbowl. And maybe it's a bit, after I tell one thing, they say, and then the person just can stand and sit and and get the microphone and doesn't need to have a microphone, but just someone who just get touched by something, and you just can have an empty chair here when you were facing someone instead of facing a lot of people. Like your reaction and the way you were trying to say some things will definitely be different. And it's good to perceive when you're outside, it's good to perceive it.
It would seem that it would be a lot less intimidating for a group of students who is unused to and uncomfortable with public speaking in front of a large audience to have an inner circle like this and to begin speaking to each other, because you can push out of your mind that there's 100 people watching you. And I think that's a value added that the panel discussion doesn't have.
I feel like, I have all these things and different experiences and problems and challenges. Like, how can I remember all of this complete list and then to convey it? But you tell your story, and then all of a sudden I connect, and then that reminds me of this experience that I have. I can share right away.
The bell begins to ring on its own, and I don't know what that means, but we are entitled to our own meaning making. We always are. So
can I make one more comment? Sure. My question was not facetious or anything like that about having 100 students bolted down seats. I think the point is that you want to go through the various liberating structures, because a lot of us know fair share, and the fishbowl has been around for a while, but they may not always work in the setting, the physical setting that you're in.
But we did 1 through 4, just, what was that? Can't recall. It's all a blur. But it can be done, so a number of them can be done.
A structure, which we call 15% solution. A 50% solution asks you to pay attention to what you can do. We are very good at being aware of all the things that are obstacles that we cannot do, that we complain about and moan and bitch and so forth. It's much more difficult to be aware of what we can do. And very often we need help for that. So the 15% is what you're free to do, what you have the authority or the resources or that you don't need to ask permission and you don't need anybody else to do. Okay? And so the question that we ask you, at the beginning of this morning, we asked, what is the thing that you're most anxious about? It could be that subject or it could be something else. So we ask you, what can you do right now to address your biggest challenge? So the question is, what discretion do you have? What is your 15% solution to whatever your biggest challenge is? And we are going to ask you to address this in groups of 3. So the way this works, each one of you will have 10 minutes. So it's a 10-minute consulting session. So give yourself just a moment to think about what it is that you want to present, and you're going to present your challenge to the other 2 and share your thoughts about this is what I'm thinking of doing. This is my 15%. Okay? And the other 2 are there at your disposal for the rest of the time to help you improve on your 15% and come up with alternatives, ideas, suggestions, which you may or may not like. But that's, you may or may decide to accept or not accept. Okay? And so you do that, the first one, 10 minutes, and then it's the second person. Your 10 minutes. Here is my challenge, here's what I'm thinking of doing. What do you guys think about? What are your thoughts? What's your reaction?
But this is how it is.